So here we are, Project Inspired 2023, the last day, and before the sun sets and before the curtain comes down. So there's one thing that I'd like every single person to leave this convention conference with, and that's the one thing that we can control, and that's our minds. So the topic today is a concept called the law of attraction. Is this a Torah concept? So before we do anything, the underlying concept we're going to be talking about today is how powerful the mind is. The best way, I think, so you guys will appreciate how powerful the mind is by way of illustration. So here's what we're going to do. I want everyone in this hall, hopefully in unison, to say the word silk, S-I-L-K, 7 times, okay? Together, 1, 2, 3. Silk, 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 silk. Okay, fantastic. And what do cows drink? Okay, cows drink water. So why is it that there's a knee-jerk reaction that immediately after hearing silk 7 times that we say milk? There's a thing called the illusory truth effect. The illusory truth effect says that if you repeat something 3 or 4 times, ostensibly from a credible source, something amazing happens. That you get so used to a certain syllable, you get so used to a certain concept, that it's as if you lose your critical thinking and you become an automaton. You just blurt things out. This is used in the advertising industry, this is used in the entertainment industry, and this is basically was the theme of my TED Talk, is how people just drink the Kool-Aid and they don't think anymore. It's unbelievable. I'm on campus a lot, speaking to a lot of these Mishagoyim on campus about things like men falling pregnant, and I mean, this is the 21st century. When you stand in front of these people and you say, just can you tell me what you mean by that? They have no clue. They're drinking the Kool-Aid, they're listening to the Clinton News Network, to CNN, and all they're doing is parroting what they hear. The power of the mind. So as a speaker and someone who's on radio and on podcasts, there's another concept called theater of the mind, which is why radio is so powerful, because you can't see the person, but you can create something in a person's mind. I want you to picture the scene, ladies and gentlemen. A big black limo. Tinted windows. The limo driver, let's call him James, dark glasses. James is in our big black limo, tinted windows, dark glasses. He's driving down the New Jersey, what's the main road here? Turnpike. No street lights. Street lights are off. No street lights on. Black limo, tinted windows, dark glasses, street lights off. He's moving down the New Jersey Parkway at about 85 miles an hour. And on one of the off-ramps, the hero of our story, little Moshe, is playing on the side of the road with his little ball. The ball rolls out into the road. Meantime, James is still whipping through the exit. Again, dark glasses, tinted, street lights off. 2 feet away from our little hero, little Moshe, James cranks on the brakes. How did James know Moshe was there? Dark glasses, tinted windows, street lights. How did he know that Moshe was there? It was broad daylight. So theater of the mind, as soon as I say that the street lights are off, what are you thinking? It's dark, right? That's the power of the mind. Okay. So by just using the illusory truth effect and the concept of theater of the mind, we can appreciate how powerful this thing called the mind is. The law of attraction was made famous by an Australian woman whose name was Rhonda Byrne. She wrote a best-selling book called The Secret. It's an absolute marketing ingenious idea, and basically, in a nutshell, The Secret hypothecated the following premise. And this is, in essence, the law of attraction, that people can really get all the things they want simply by thinking positively about them. The essence of what she was saying is that you can make your mind into a magnet, and if you're thinking certain positive thoughts, you can attract those positive things into your life. And this became a crazy cult. They got secret workshops, secret badges, insane. She made millions and millions of dollars. So what the question is that we should ask today is this a Torah concept? That if you think positive things, that you can attract those things, and in essence, by having a positive mindset, you really can control your destiny to a large extent. So the reason why that concept is antithetical to Torah and is complete kfira is, who knows more what we need, ourselves or HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So Rhonda Bryan, the secret premise is you get what you greed. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I love you too much to get what you greed. I'm going to give you what you need. If you're thinking positive things and say, just think of myself, I can see myself winning the lottery, how do you know by being a billionaire that that's going to be good for you? Every single person in this room, according to the Vilna Gaon, has been here before. Even in his time, we can prove positive, you can assume that you are a Gilgul of some form. If anyone in this room has ever had a deja vu, has anyone had a deja vu in this room? You've had this feeling, it was a Sunday morning, you're listening to an unbelievable lecture in Stanford. Have you ever had that feeling? What is the concept, according to many Sfarim, the deja vu is a spitz of you've been here before. We don't know why things happen to us. When people come to the rabbi and say, Rabbi, why is this happening? And the rabbi attempts to answer that, that's insane. Because we really don't know why HaKadosh Baruch Hu does things. But the notion that you get what you greed is completely narcissistic. It places the ego, it places the human being at the center of destiny, and that is not a Torah concept. Why? Because the center is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and He gives us what you need and not what you greed. There's a famous quote by George Bernard Shaw, which basically says that there are two great tragedies in life. One, when is not having your prayers answered, and the second one is sometimes, God forbid, having your prayers answered. The Almighty will give you what you need and not what you greed. Let's just peel this back a little bit in terms of the difference between the law of attraction, which says if you think a certain positive thing, you make your mind sort of into a magnet and you contract anything that you're thinking, versus the idea of tracht gut soll sein gut, which we're going to talk about in a second. If you think good things, you can attract certain mazal to your life. What's the difference between thinking positive things and thinking certain things which you think can happen and you can change your destiny, versus having complete trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Let's see the difference by citing certain basic sources in Jewish thinking. In Tehillim, just to translate some Tehillim, we say, one who trusts in the Almighty, kindness surrounds him. Again, I'm just translating loosely. Fortunate is the person who puts trust in God. Why is there the belief, and this is axiomatic to living a Torah life, that if you trust and you surrender to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that it will be good? Where does that come from philosophically? Axiomatic to everything we're going to talk about is HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves you, that there is no such a thing that can be imparted from the Almighty that is bad. And therefore, if you trust HaKadosh Baruch Hu, basically what you're just doing is you opening up the purview for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give you the bracha that He wants to give you. The best analogy I can think of is you've got little Moshe, a 3-year-old kid who's sitting on the bed, and he thrusts himself into his mommy's arms. Do you think he doubts that his mommy's going to catch him? On a very simple level, it's the same thing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If you tell HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I trust you, I have no idea how I'm going to pay the mortgage, I have no clue how this, and you so-called thrust yourself at HaKadosh Baruch Hu, He Kaviyochel puts himself in a situation where He has to catch you. Because you imagine having that kind of trust and getting disappointed time and time and again. And we'll explain the difference between that and being somech on a nace. You cannot rely on a miracle. But it's the same concept of we are babies in terms of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it's really letting go and trusting HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's when you can make sure that there's certain things in terms of kindness surrounding you. Let's go through some of the other sources. The Zohar, for example, says, Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha, right? Simcha is something that will also attract certain things that having atzvutz won't. When we had the times of the Nevi'im, any of the prophets couldn't have siyat or ruach hakodesh if they were depressed. Again, physiologically, neurologically, and emotionally, there's certain things that open up when you're happy that don't open up when you're not. I can tell you as a speaker, when things are going and you're psyched and you're pumped, you're in the zone. Things happen, you just say things. It's the same thing when it's exactly the opposite. There's something that's very real about the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu wired us, not only physically but spiritually. So the concept of really surrendering and giving up to Shem, and if there's Hashem being besimcha, because besimcha is the same gematria as machshava. The power of being besimcha, notwithstanding the fact that every single person who walked into this room today has pain. Every single person who walked into this room has a peckle. And every single person that walked into this room at some point in their life, in some way, shape or form, has looked heaven-bound and said, Hashem, why me? The reason that I know that is I've been speaking for 20 years, I've yet ever in any forum said to the following: if there's anyone in this room whose life is a complete cakewalk, that wakes up every day and is psyched, and whose marriage is perfect, has millions of dollars in the bank, that doesn't have any dysfunctional kids, please stand up. I've never ever had anyone stand up. Baruch Hashem. Why Baruch Hashem? Because the Rambam says there are 4 levels of pain in this journey called life. The most benign level of pain, according to the Rambam, is financial pain. It's a pusher, it's awkward, you stress out, how am I going to pay? That's the most benign level. The next level up, which is a more acute form of pain, is health. That's something money cannot buy. The level up from health, according to the Rambam, is vicarious pain. The best way that we can understand it is the pain that a parent has for a child. There's not a single conference that I've been through not a program I've ever spoken to in the last I don't know how many years, where a parent doesn't come up to me before they open their mouth, there's a tear that wells up, and I know they're about to talk about something about their kids. Rabbi, what do I do? I know exactly what's coming. That is the penultimate level of pain. What is, according to the Rambam, and according to all Sfarim, the quintessential, the biggest form of pain a person can feel in this journey called life? It's indifference. No pain at all. That was the oynish, that was the punishment of the Nachash in the time of Adam and Chava. The snake, the so-called snake, had everything. He had his food, he could crawl on his face, he never had any reason to look heaven-bound. That's not a reward, that's a punishment. There's a certain physiological condition, I'm sure there's doctors here today, where a person literally doesn't feel physical pain. I met someone who told me that they have this machla. If they put their hand on the flame, the only reason they know that their hand is burning is they can smell the burning flesh. No pain is not something that you want. The Gemara says, by the way, very clearly, if you go 30 days in your life without any pain, it's not a good thing. Again, if you wanted to talk on a very deep level, it's a concept called a tzimtzum, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes a step back. Ain't a good thing. Okay, let's move on to the fact that we started by saying the secret posits the law of attraction, where Rhonda Byrne said essentially that make yourself think certain things that you really want, and that you can attract that into your life, and therefore you can change your destiny. We asked, is this a Torah concept? We said no. Why? Because the notion in the secular world, if it is to be, it's up to me, it's not a Torah concept, because we believe if it is to be, it's up to he. We said that the concept of the law of attraction puts the person in the center, whereas HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be in the center. We spoke about yesterday, the Torah starts with a Beis. It says in Sfarim because there's something before the Torah, and that's an Aleph. We are not the center of the universe. HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs our life. However, we're going to pivot, and this is where I would like to spend most of our time. Does that mean, because the law of attraction is not something that's in sync with the Torah concept, does that mean that we don't believe in the power of the mind? Let's talk about some examples of the power of the mind purely from a secular perspective, and then we're going to dovetail into a Torah perspective. There's an experiment that was recently done at Stanford University where the people that volunteered said they told them they were involved in an experiment. The person who was carrying out the experiment told the students that volunteered for this particular experiment, they're going to be blindfolded, and what's going to happen is we're going to take a paper clip, the professor said. We're going to take a paper clip and we're going to put it over a flame, and after a minute or two, we're going to take this paper clip and we're going to just touch your arm, and it's going to burn a little bit. That was the experiment, and they wanted to see how they react. There was no paperclip. There was no burning. They took a pencil. When they took that pencil and they touched the person's arm, a little burn mark appeared. How does that happen? The power of psychosomania. The power of the mind is something very powerful. We represent a number of very famous athletes, very famous celebrities. You may have heard of the most decorated Olympian of all time, a person by the name of Michael Phelps. If you look at the Olympics and you see Michael Phelps ascending up to the little diving board, you'll notice that he's wearing a headset and he's listening obviously to Rabbi Gordon Shearim. There's no question. He has certain images that he's listening to, subliminally that he's listening to something, but in his mind's eye, he's hitting the end of the pool. He's hitting the end of the pool. Michael Phelps told Mark Spitz, who told me, Mark Spitz was the preceding person whose record was broken by Michael Phelps, that there's no question in his mind that there were certain times that he won by like 1/16 of a second. It's all in the head. The power of the mind is insane. Another example, just in a second, and then we'll pivot to the Torah. I represented Manny Pacquiao for about a couple of years. Manny Pacquiao is a very famous boxer, probably the best-known boxer outside of the United States. He was a world champion in 8 different... I have no idea how this happened. Obviously, HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows that I'm a speaker and set the whole thing up. We're at MGM in Las Vegas, the holy city in Nevada, and I'm in the back area. There's only myself and this guy, Freddie Roach. Freddie Roach is his coach. I have no idea how this happened. Some guy got through security. So you've got to understand, when you're gloved up, there's not much you can do, right? You've got these big buttons on this, you're just a little bit hamstrung. Someone got through security and handed Freddie a brown envelope. There's not much you could do, right? I was standing right there. Freddie took the envelope, opened it, and just took it out enough for Manny to see that it was divorce papers. From Jinky to Manny. Manny's probably the most talented boxer in the history of the world. I saw it with my own eyes. He went out to fight Bradley, who was not even anywhere near his league. He was absolutely clobbered and killed. Had a terrible fight. How did that happen? The power of the mind. How many people do you know? The notion I get asked as often, is psychosomania something that's real? Somatizing something is very real. A study that came out recently at Harvard University said about 67% of maladies medically are all psychosomatic, the power of the mind. There's no question that the mind is the most powerful organ in the body. That's from a secular perspective. What about the power of the mind from a Torah perspective? Do you see in the Torah any big prose of explaining the emotions of the protagonist of whatever's happening? Do you see in the Torah when Avram is about to shecht his own son, does it discuss that he was freaked out, that he was depressed, that he was taking Prozac? Does it say that anywhere in the Torah? There is nowhere in the Torah that talks about emotions. That's not what the Torah is about. There's one place in the Torah that talks about emotions. And the only reason is because it's supposed to teach us something. Where is the place in the Torah that talks about how someone was feeling? You don't know how the patriarchs are feeling. You don't know how the matriarchs are feeling. There's one place in the Torah that says how someone was feeling. And that's the greatest person in the world. There will never be a greater person than Moshe Rabbeinu. Let me paraphrase the part in the Torah to hopefully underscore the power of the mind from a Torah perspective. We know the famous story where Moshe Rabbeinu went out, he saw an Egyptian man striking a Hebrew, and he killed, much more complicated than this, he killed this Egyptian, and here's the pasuk I'll translate into English. Moshe became frightened. Only time in the Torah you'll see the explanation of how he was feeling. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't play games. There's not a drop of ink that is spilt in the Torah that is not there for a reason. It's there to teach us. Moshe became frightened, and quote, again, I'm just translating, indeed, the story has become known. Moshe was concerned that Paro would find out that he killed this Mitzri, and that would be the beginning of him being thrown out of Mitzrayim, etc., etc. And did that happen? Paro heard of the incident, and he sought to slay Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe ran to Midian. The Mefarshim say the reason why Paro heard about this is because that's what Moshe's number one fear is. The notion that if you fear something, that can become realized is a Torah concept. I'm going to tell you something now that's going to blow your shackles off. Do you know the story of Yosef who was thrown into a bore? Is there anything in the Torah that is superfluous or redundant? Not a drop of ink that is spilt for no reason. Again, loosely translated, it says that the brothers threw Yosef into the bore, and it goes on to say that the bore, meaning whatever this cave was empty, and it had no water. If it was empty, so Mamela had no water, why is the Torah telling us something that l'chaira is superfluous? Decent question. The Mefarshim say something very interesting. Even though it was empty, it had snakes and scorpions. Here comes the bumper. The Mefarshim say that bore is like your mind. If it's empty and it has no water, what is the personification of water from a Torah perspective? It's Torah. If you have an empty mind and it's thinking of things that are complete narishkeit, not related to Torah, you will have snakes and scorpions. You're opening yourself up to be thinking of things that are not exactly good for you. This is the reason why you came to Project Inspired, because this is going to change your life. Reb Nach Weinberg used to make us promise, people in the inner circle that knew the Rosh very well, we had to learn things off by heart. So we had to chaza off by heart. There was never a time that I was walking through the rover, and never a time I was walking anywhere in my life without chazering a pasuk in my head. An empty head is a very, very dangerous thing, because this is the source that will tell you that your mind will be full with snakes and scorpions, and what that is in colloquial terms is not positive things. When people walking and they don't know why they just don't feel good about themselves, there's subliminal thoughts that you're attracting that are coming into your head that bring you down. How do you make sure that does not happen? You supplant that, you supersede that with a positive thinking, and that's why positive mantras work. That's why positive affirmation works. And that's why every single person sitting in Madison Square Gardens today is going to have something that I want you to learn off by heart. If it's as simple as whatever it is, you should never walk through any place with an empty mind. The Nefesh HaChaim says, Rav Chaim Volozhin was a Talmud Muvak, was the most famous Talmud of the Vilna Gaon. He said, if you're ever in danger, if you walk through a field and you're seeing 17 people come to you with knives, with 15 tattoos, and 30, and they're not there to wish you Shalom Aleichem, if you say, Ein od milvado, you will not be harmed. The same concept. I know someone firsthand who was going through passport control and realized in the line they forgot their passport. This person was saying to him, and I said, just say this pasuk, Ein od milvado. Came to the front of the line, and the passport control person stamped his book of Tehillim and he said, go. The power of the mind. You fill yourself with certain Torah things because why? Because it's an optical illusion. This whole thing in this world is an optical illusion. I want you guys to read a book called Breakfast in America. It's the premise of how you understand who God is, and it's an unbelievable thing. In the book, the Breakfast in America, the author writes himself into the book. And he's sitting in the bar on a stool next to the protagonist, next to the main character. And the character looks at the author and he says, oh my, because he realizes the author with a swipe of a pen can just write him out the story. That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. People think it's on automatic mode. The fact I woke up this morning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving me neshama. I'm here for a HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with you, and if he's not willing the fact that you're here in an unbelievable lecture, poof, it's gone. That's the concept of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When people say, I eat out certain fish because maybe Hashem, he's there, he sees, he loves you. The concept then again of the power of the mind is very much axiomatic to a Torah concept. If the greatest person in the world, a Moshe Rabbeinu's emotions can in effect make something happen. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us that an empty mind, the bore in the case of Yosef, that had empty and it had no water, water meaning some kind of Torah, it was filled with snakes and scorpions, that's the lesson for all of us. That if you have a fallow or empty mind, it's a dangerous thing. Chazal say one of the most dangerous things in the world is a person who is lazy or a person who's not doing anything. It's not a good thing. If you're too busy, it's a fantastic thing, because if a person is indifferent and they're just cruising, you're not going to attract very good things. So let's pause for a second. We start off by saying, what's the law of attraction? In the book called The Secret, it posits the notion that if you think certain things that you really want, you can attract them. We said from a Torah perspective that is not the correct point of departure, because we don't make ourselves the center of the universe, we make HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We said if you surrender to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu only wants good, and it's like a little baby jumping off his cot, HaKadosh Baruch Hu basically is going to say, I have to help this person because they're completely relying on, and that's for us, pedagogically, the best way you should think of it. We went on to say, does that mean because the secret, the law of attraction is not a Torah concept, does that mean the power of the mind is not a Torah concept? We said absolutely not. We gave a secular example of someone being burnt by a pencil. We then went on to talk about the Torah. We gave the example of Moshe Rabbeinu and of Yosef HaTzadik. I want to talk about also the power of words. Has anyone here been to a magic show? What does a magician generally say before he pulls the bunny out of the hat? Abracadabra. Do you know, is abracadabra some weird word? It literally, what does it mean in Hebrew? Diber. If you look at what abracadabra means, he's created and he's spoken daber. The power of the words is something unbelievable. If Rahman al-Islam, a person has a certain disease, we never say the name of that disease. Why do we say Yena Machla? Because there's the power of words is something that's very real. What's the source in the Torah of the power of words? Parshas Noach. There were two kinds of animals that HaKadosh Baruch Hu directed Noach to take into the ark. There were two kinds of animals. What kind? One was tamei, and the other was tahor. One was pure, and the other one was so-called not pure. If you look at the pasuk in the Torah, what does it say? If you look at the Gemara, it says in Psachim as well, is that it doesn't say tamei, it says what? It says lo tahor. Lo tahor. The power of words is huge. And that's one of the reasons why never ever for the rest of your life, when a person says, Moshe, how are you doing? People just blur things out. It could be better. It's not so good. Be very, very careful. Be very, very careful. Say Baruch Hashem. I've seen it with my own eyes. How did the Almighty create the world? With words. What's the basic difference between a Homo sapien and animals? It's very, very powerful what you say. Be careful not to say something like, if I see this person, I'm going to rip their shaitel off. I've seen it with my own eyes. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us that what the secular world says is complete shtus. It's the exact opposite. Sticks and stones can't break my bones, but words can never harm me. It's the exact opposite. I have unfortunately been at too many situations mediating between husband and wife because of words. They harm and they're multi-generational. I have unfortunately officiated far too many levias where I see brother and brother is sitting together and they haven't spoken for years. The power of saying one thing that can divide families, that can split people up. Is the power of words something real? You better believe it's something very real. Let's talk about, for a second, the power of positive desire. Just thinking positive things. What the Gemara say in Makos? In a direction that a person wants to go, they lead him. Who's the they? Why is it plural? It's the one time the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov work in synchronicity. Is the power of desire, that there's nothing that can come in front of Ratzon, is a fundamental concept that Chazal talk about. Where do we see this in the Torah? We see this in the Torah in the case of Basia. The greatest person that has ever sojourned in the world is in a basket, a little baby. He's got his pacifier on and he's cruising down the Nile River. And it says very clearly, it says in Shmois, it's in the Midrash, that says, how far was Basia from the basket? It says basically it was 10 amos. Do you know, 10 amos is about 90 feet. And she stretched out her arm, and she reached the basket and brought Moshe Rabbeinu into safety. Is that at all possible? This is the concept, is we dress up, we suit up, we do the best we can, and if you have that ratzon, and you really believe it, HaKadosh Baruch Hu can extend you beyond derech hateva. That's the power of ratzon. Again, I've seen this time and time again. It's something that's very real. The Torah is not a history book. It's not, firstly, it's out of sequence completely. It's the instructions for living. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling you that this is something then real, rest assured that it's something real. And that's one of the reasons that one of the jobs of the Yetzer Hara is to bring a person into atzvus, to depression. Why depression? Because if you're down, that's when he's got you. And that's one of the reasons why, and I see this and I counsel people all the time. If there's something that keeps coming up in your mind's eye, that voice that says you're shmendrik, that voice that says, why am I the only person here that's single? There's a voice that says, why don't I have children? Don't engage in that voice, because the minute, according to the many Sfarim, Revolbi talks about, as soon as you engage in this discussion, you're gone. When that voice comes in your head, and you're sitting and hearing an amazing lecture with a gorgeous South African accent, and they're saying this is unbelievable, and your heart starts beating because in a couple of hours, the curtain's going to come down, and you're going to have to face your life, because Project Inspire is going to end. And you hear the voice saying, but what about the mortgage? What about my sugar dicker husband? You can say, that's very nice, fantastic. We'll discuss that in a couple of hours. If you're sitting here and you're going to have that dialogue in your head, he's won. Again, this is Behavior Modification 101, but that's his job. His job is to try and steer you, and one of the most powerful things that you can possibly be is be in the moment. This will never, ever, ever, ever happen again in your life. This is one of the challenges of this generation because of social media and the proliferation of technology. It's very, very hard to be in the moment. There is no question, and I'm going to say something which is going to sound bizarre because you can ask me about your Bechira, I'm happy to discuss it, that every single person that's here today, right this second, sitting in this room was meant to be here. There's some reason HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted you to come to this lecture. I mean, this is only a decent lecture, obviously, but there's a reason why you're here. I have no clue what I'm going to say that potentially will touch your soul. I'm hoping that there'll be some way we can grow together. But if you hear and you're thinking about the mortgage or you're thinking about your Auntie Esther, you're not here. There's some reason why you're here, and for some way, shape or form that can change your life. Okay, let's make a summary, and then I want to say something that every single person can do because we've covered a lot of ground here. Number one, we said that Rhonda Byrne penned a book called The Secret. The underlying premise is the law of attraction, that you can think certain positive things and you can will those things to happen. We said, is that a Torah concept? We said no. Why? Because that makes you the center of the universe as opposed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We do believe that if you open the veils, so to speak, that you surrender to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and understand that everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does is good, that by trusting and deferring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you can make sure that good things happen. We said if if the secret is not accurate, what does that mean in terms of the power of the mind? We gave secular examples of how the Stanford experiment burnt a person's arm. We then pivoted to a Torah perspective. We used Moshe Rabbeinu as an example of his being frightened and kachava. That's what happened. We used the example of Yosef HaTzadik in the bar. The fact that the bar had empty, no water, but it had snakes and scorpions. We then went on to talk about the power of the words, abracadabra. We said that in Parshas Noach, we say lo tahar. We then went on to talk about the power of ratzon, and we said that that's something that's very real. And then we're going to talk about now, before we take questions, we're going to talk about the power of a positive attitude. So I'd like to get 2 volunteers. Jonathan, you're one of them, whether you like it or not. Yes, ma'am. You're up. Because that's one thing, Jonathan, I'd like you to come out. Take a look at that red dot there. We're live streaming to 2.4 billion people. Take that. Take this. Okay, what I'd like you to do is just stand in front of the camera. This is your big break. Okay. And I want you to read that poem with expression from the word today.
Today was the absolute worst day ever. And don't try to convince me that there's something good in every day, because when you take a closer look, this world is a pretty evil place. Even if some goodness does shine through once in a while, satisfaction and happiness don't last. And it's not true that it's all in the mind and heart, because true happiness can be attained only if one's surroundings are good. It's not true that good exists. I'm sure you can agree that the reality creates my attitude. It's all beyond my control. And you'll never in a million years hear me say that today was a very good day.
America has talent, ladies and gentlemen. A big round of applause. Unbelievable. Beautiful stuff. Okay, Jonathan, by the way, the reason why I'm called Jonathan up is besides being an amazing guy, I'm going to give him an unabashed plug. Daily giving. Have you ever, any of you involved in daily giving? This is the guy. Beautiful concept. There's no reason in the world why people don't give money to daily giving and to the Chanan Gordon Trust Fund. I mean, same. Jonathan, I'd like you to look at the back there, live streaming. Same poem. There's no trick. There's no bunny. I'd like you to read this poem from the bottom up. Same poem.
Today was a very good day, and you'll never in a million years hear me say that it's all beyond my control. My attitude creates the reality. I'm sure you can agree that it's not true that good exists, only if one's surroundings are good. True happiness can be attained because it's all in the mind and heart. And it's not true that satisfaction and happiness don't last. While some goodness does shine through once in, even if this world is a pretty evil place. Because when you take a closer look, there's something good in every day, and don't try to convince me that today was the absolute worst day ever.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big hand of applause. Same poem, and I'll give you copies of this poem. What's the difference? Attitude. The difference between seeing something as half full versus half empty. The one underlying theme of gratitude, of attitude, relies on gratitude. It's absolutely impossible for a person to have a karas hatov. Isaac was telling me a beautiful story as he walks in here about the concept of being makatov, a karas hatov. What happens when we wake up every single morning? We have no right to say that it's coming to me. The entitlement, the I generation is completely the antithesis of a Torah concept. Modeh, really, we spoke about this before, is a grammatical oddity. It should say ani modeh. We don't use ani because we are not the center of the universe. Here's the power of gratitude. A story is told of a blind man who's on the side of the road with his hat out. And he has a cardboard that's penned, "Today is a beautiful day." And people from time to time are walking past and they're throwing a quarter into this hat. And he hears a shuffle. It's a certain type of walk, and understand that if the Almighty takes away one of your senses, your other senses are accentuated. So the concept of hearing is more profound in a person who doesn't have sight. He feels the shuffle, and he smells the smell of a Sharpie, one of those markers, and he feels that someone's taken his sign and writing 5 words. and puts the sign back next to the hat. And 2 minutes later, tons of coins start coming into his hat. And he sees people stopping and throwing coins in. And from the trickle of coins, suddenly his hat fills up within minutes. And at the end of the day, as the work day ends, he hears that same shuffle. And he says, "Sir, are you the person that took my sign that says, 'Today is a beautiful day'? And I smelt that marker, and you made you must have added a few words." Suddenly after that, everyone started giving. "Can I ask you, what did you write on my sign?" And the person said, "Your sign said, 'Sir, today is a beautiful day.' I just added 5 words, but I can't see it." And that triggers the sense of Hakaras Hatov. When people walk past someone who's missing something that they have, you have this feeling of tremendous gratitude to the Almighty. Every single person sitting in this room, every single person that came to Project Inspired has something that most people in the world do not have. And that's the Yiddish neshama. There are, again, 8.7 billion people on this planet called Earth. 0.02% are Jewish. The biggest gift the Almighty can ever bestow on a mere mortal is a Jewish soul. And out of that 0.2%, at best 10% are even in the parsha of sitting on Sunday morning, listening to an incredible lecture and understanding that there's meaning and that there's purpose, and this is not all a random happenstance. The Gemara says very clearly in Sanhedrin that every single person in this room, it talks about Balei Tshuva, but it's Nogea to everyone, is hand-picked from the Almighty to be His ambassadors. You in this room are the princes and the princesses. It's up to people in this room to carry the torch to the next generation. We should well up with Hakaras Hatov. We've been bestowed with the greatest gift that the Almighty could ever give anyone. As the curtain falls in a couple of hours on Project Inspired, I want you to go back to your respective communities and understand you're being given the greatest gift the Almighty can give someone. And I ask you one thing only: share that gift. Share that gift with the disenfranchised brothers and sisters that are not too as fortunate to be at a Project Inspired convention. It's been a terrific Shabbos. It's been a wonderful convention. I thank you all for your time. Thank you for listening. I'll take any questions, but thank you for listening.